This is Lawrence Lotz, and welcome to the Wolf of Queen Street. Welcome back to the Wolf of Queen Street podcast series. Welcome back. But before we get started in today's show, I just want to do a shout out to the location that I record from, Campfire Studios, studio in the central part of Auckland. It's an amazing place to do these podcasts, as you see, on a week-to-week basis, or to me, every sort of fortnight or so. And it's not just a studio where you can produce podcasts and everything else, but it's also they're trying to build a community of bringing people together to have their message shared out to the world. And it's such an ease to pretty much walk in and do it straight from Campfire Studio. So big shout out to them in the central part of Auckland. But shout over to my guest today, Guy Willis from Rightmate, New Zealand. Guy, I met you last year at the charity event that I was helped launch, myself and another guy from Hendo's Hot Topics, the 538 event. Your journey with Rightmate, about you started covering this journey of going away from the booze, or stepping away from the booze and the culture behind that, and wanted to sort of journey yourself. See the journey through it as you're journeying across Instagram, and then also saw the sort of the impact of removing the booze, but also the mental health side that comes with it as well. So, Guy, thanks for coming to the show.
No problem. No, love it. Thank you very much for having me here.
No, that's awesome. And also just to say that you work in the construction industry. Yeah. You said to me you're a dog man. I had to actually do a research on what a dog man was. And I understand it in the construction industry, one of those big fields within New Zealand itself uniquely that unfortunately has a very big drinking culture behind that. Yeah. So I'd love to start off just a bit about your story. You said that you started Rightmate about, giving up the booze, but I'd love to know your story and what your thoughts and why you felt almost that need.
Yeah, it was something that I knew had been on the card for a while, for years, in fact. And I'd grown up with a big rugby culture around me in the UK, and obviously that kind of comes hand in hand with drinking. But from that, I ended up suppressing a lot of feelings, thoughts, a lot of things in general. And I ended up coming over here, had a few issues back in the UK. I was big into my drugs. I was big drinker, all that kind of side of things. Went to run away from my problems, which meant coming to New Zealand, coming to the other side of the world. And it was... it didn't change because I was still doing the same things. And then I got to a point, one thing after another, I met a new partner, but the problems were still there and still reoccurring. And then after one big argument near my birthday, I was like, right, I need to do something about this. How long am I going to keep going down this road and hurting myself, but also people around me? So I decided at that point to get myself to the AA. I then went to counselling as well. I did it all. Everything that you can think of towards mental health, towards getting yourself sorted, I did it because it was important to me. And in the process of doing that, I thought, right, how can I make... Because I was how I see myself as a lad's lad kind of thing, and there was nothing that I initially saw that was out there that could help me. And I thought, right, okay, I'm going to journal this slightly and just kind of do videos and bit of help and tools, but also more for myself because
accountability pretty much.
Completely. And because there'd been many times before where I was like, oh, I'm going to give up drinking, and then never did, and met up with the lads and all that business. And it just kept me honest. And also I was never great at journaling and writing things down. So doing videos and being able to re-look at some of those things meant that I could develop and also see the progress I was making, and that it was worth something along the way. And then, Rightmate kind of was birthed, and it was great. It's been really good. I've had a lot of support on there. And more importantly, I think I've been able to help a few other people out who didn't think that there was that kind of support there as well.
Awesome. So you're sober at the moment?
Yes.
How long?
6 months.
6 months.
Yeah, just done 6 months now. I'd originally done a year.
Yep.
And then I went back to the UK, first time in 4 years, and I was like, okay, I'm going to test the water out here a bit. I've done my year. I feel pretty good. Let's give it a go. I did 3 weeks, and there was no particular issues. It wasn't like I suddenly became like the Tasmanian devil and started like running about everywhere and punching people and getting into fights or anything like that. But I could just see the wheels coming off very, very slowly. Some cogs just stopped turning as well as they were. I was tired. I was lethargic all the time. I was getting snappier with my partner. I was just like, I don't like this guy. Yep. And I did 3 weeks, and I was like, right, bollocks to this. I'm getting sober again, and that's what I did. And don't get me wrong, it's been a lot easier this time round because I've been able to look at what to keep an eye on and feelings that come up from that and stuff like that. And it's a lot easier to manage because I've gained those tools from before, basically. So yeah, but 6 months sober now and happy as Larry.
So the first time you went, it was a year that you said, right?
Yeah.
From the realization, everything else, and you said I came off the trigger point of that big argument. Can you can remember that point quite vividly?
The actual time not that well because I was really drunk.
Yeah. But the anchor and that memory of itself.
The next day I woke up. My partner had left the house, rightfully so. Big argument. And I remember just being sat on a sofa, half naked, in tears, and I just felt lost, but also like, what is the point in this? What is alcohol bringing to my life apart from misery and this kind of falsehood of being
bravado,
completely.
Right?
And it's something that I have now really kind of focused on, is that kind of ego side of things, especially in men, because we don't talk about our feelings and all that business. And I think it's something where if we can initially get it earlier on and know what to look out for, that's something that in the long run I could benefit from. So
totally. Something a lot of people don't realize about me is I went 5 years sober. I went 5 years sober from the age of 21. So from like peak, similar culture. I grew up around the rugby culture. I was pretty decent in my teens, rep level, brought up in that, into club scene. I went as 18, as soon as I was 18, because I've always been quite a large guy. I straight away went into the nightclub scene by 18. 6 months later, I was running nightclubs and bars in South Africa. So I had unlimited amount of booze. I remember when we used to start our shift, the owner of the nightclub would start us off at 8 o'clock at night with 5 tequilas per person.
Just as a warm-up.
Yeah, as a warm-up. You go, there's your 5 tequilas, let's go. And that would put you in the range just to get yourself off edge and chill. And that's how we started. And I was doing that 4 to 5 nights a week. And that was just the start of the night. And I was going to 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, sometimes even 6. And still supposedly going into university, a few hours later. But that was literally my life for 12, 18 months, 2 years. And it was just going there, and it was unlimited. When I was working, it was free booze as well. So it's like, hey, I'm 18, don't have to pay for it, or 19, I don't have to pay for it. It's just there.
Yeah.
And then it got to a crazy point. And why I asked you if you can remember that memory is, due to my injuries, I can't even remember what I usually have for breakfast, but I can remember the exact moment where I realized I had a drinking problem. Unbeknownst to myself at that stage, I was close to consuming a bottle of vodka a day, just part of day-to-day life, drinking a neat, and fully functional, no issues. But where I realized the exact problem was, I went with my family very early morning in a place in Edward Street, Durbanville in Cape Town. There's a whole row of restaurants and clubs, and then there was this sort of Italian chain called Primi Piatti, and they did breakfast. And we ended up there, and it could have been like 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning. Sat down. Like I said, I can remember this vividly. Waiter comes over and goes, "Okay, guys, what can I get you guys for drinks? Like, what do you want to drink?" And it's 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning. And the first person is like, "Oh, can I get a coffee? Can I get an orange juice? Can I apple juice?" And I'm like, "Can I get a double vodka on the rocks neat?"
Yeah.
And something just clicked, and I went, "Hold on, whoa, what's going on here?" It's like, 8 o'clock in the morning and I've just ordered a double vodka rocks. And it's a South African double, so it's like
double.
Yeah, it's a double. It's double of New Zealand's extra standards. It is legitimately a double. And I sat there and went, hold on, this isn't the case. This shouldn't be like this. That shouldn't feel normal to me. And then I made the decision right there and said, no, that's enough. I need to get away from this relationship with alcohol and so forth. And straight away the next day, I was like, cool, I'm sober. And I went 5 years, not a drop. And in the beginning, one of the things I would like to see your thoughts was, in the beginning, the hardest thing wasn't necessarily giving up the alcohol. The biggest thing, the challenges was the social pressure and the social situations.
Yeah,
you're right. Because I worked in nightclubs.
Yeah,
I ran in the scene that was driven by money and alcohol. Right, yeah. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to touch that.
Yeah.
So that whole, it took 2-3 years or so, but to the point where everyone in my circle understood it. So I automatically became the sober driver, and usually I still am now.
Yeah.
But I would love to know your thoughts of when you made that. How was that of a challenge in the beginning of not just giving up the alcohol, but everyone else going, oh no, guy, it's fine, man. You'll be all right, just have one.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was still playing rugby at the time. So obviously rugby's got it was just
culture.
Yeah, it is just completely. And it meant just that if I was to continue with that sport, it would have been, and it was different as well. I was the same. I wasn't like I need alcohol. It was more the social aspect I needed.
Yep.
And that whole kind of, and it was funny when you look around, everybody's in the same boat as you. It's just that some people acknowledge it and some people don't a little bit. And, but I was quite lucky. The group of friends that I initially had, I'd kind of already taken a step away from a little bit. So it was a bit easier in that sense. And the other friends that I've got were very supportive of it and knew it was the right thing for me. But
because you were a total hooligan, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I was that dickhead.
Yeah.
I was the one that you'd see on a night out and you go, fuck, look at that fella over there. That was me. I was dancing on tables, smashing stuff, getting up to
a typical British bloke, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Not to be stereotypical, but
yeah, no, I was what you see on the news at football games. That was me.
Yeah, that was one of you, right?
Yeah. So it wasn't as hard, but I completely get it. Socially, it's a fear, and it's. I think when you give up booze, you're doing what's right for you rather than what's right for everybody else. And that might not fit the remit for everybody else. And that's the tough part of it, is because you'll have gone into a social circle, which that is the point of the social circle.
Totally.
Is to go out on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. So yeah, that fear of judgment and the whole alcoholic kind of thing being put on me. Because I've never been a fan of that, of being called an alcoholic or anything like that. I've always found that alcohol was the problem. It's hard to explain. Alcohol wasn't the problem I was. That was the issue. So I wasn't, and that's where I had to go deeper.
I want to go down that.
Yeah, okay.
Cool. Let's go down that chain.
Yeah,
We'll come back to the rest of it. Do you truly believe that though?
Yeah.
Because if you were the problem, you would still be a hooligan.
Yeah, no, I think I masked so much stuff with alcohol and just let the ego side of myself run loose. And I think that's kind of down to, I've got a big thing, especially on my page, where I'm saying, fuck your ego. And I don't initially mean just get rid of your ego. That's it. We all need a bit of ego. But what it is, it's about training that ego so that you're not run by it.
Yep.
And
totally.
That was the issue I had. I was completely run by my ego, and an ego that was a falsehood, really, because it was what I thought I was. I thought I was Mr. the Joker of the pack, the fun one and everything. And actually, when it boils down to it, I was more of the dickhead in the group and a bit of the liability. So, yeah, alcohol was just a great drug to use to let me run wild and not care about myself. But once I obviously acknowledged that and was like, no, I'm the one with the issues. Alcohol hasn't got, there's things that come with alcohol. Do you know what I mean? It's like be a surfer going into the sea and not respecting the sea. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't matter how many years you've been surfing, there's still a possibility of losing your life. So, and you've got to do that with booze. You've got to respect the booze, otherwise it will fuck you. And that's what it did with me. And once I could stop it, and that's why I'm not saying alcohol's the worst thing in the world or anything like that. If you want to drink, you drink. But for me in particular, I had a lot of shit I needed to deal with, and alcohol wasn't making any of those things easier. Yeah. So, yeah.
It's so insightful there, because it's, there's two sides of it. Is the full, to me, I would say I became, I won't say I was an alcoholic, but I fully was. I was consuming a bottle of vodka a day, having no issues. I drink way more than that. And it was a normal part of it, but I also craved it.
Yeah.
So that's where it was a little bit more like I wanted it. And I would take the vodka over water.
Yeah.
And that's just sort of the difference I got myself into. And the interesting part was, because I'd gone 5 years, it's quite a large stint, it also reinforced that whole side of, hey, I've survived 5 years now. And I didn't need it.
Yeah.
And it reprogrammed the mind that, hey, I could be social without it. I could interact without it. In the beginning, it took a while to blossom and be active and feel comfortable in the situations, because I know a lot of it. I know a lot of people, and I know yourself included, struggle with social anxiety, right? The anxiety of being in groups around people, the anxiety of, hey, how can I fit in?
Yeah.
A lot of us, everyone in the world, and in the society we live today, is with these devices and social media in our face, we really struggle with, hey, how do I fit in, or how do I look cool? So we know we consume the alcohol.
Yeah.
And from me going through for quite a long time, I could realize, hey, I didn't need that. I got the reinforcement over time that I'll be all right. That's okay. I can hang out. I can have a good time. I can go and be stone sober. And what happens is I might just be a bit flatter early in the evening, because I don't have the bravado of the alcohol in my system. So I might get 11:30 or 12 o'clock, and I'm like, cool, I'm done. And everyone else still wants to rage till 2 o'clock. But I realized that I could still be the fun personality I wanted to without it. So it lost that whole full control over me.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's funny you saying about an alcoholic, 'cause to me, I struggle with what is the definition of an alcoholic. You're saying about the that crave, and I agree with you. I was exactly the same. I would crave it, but I find it very hard to find people who don't crave booze anymore. There's not most people and it doesn't have to be rugby or does it, but people work towards the weekend because they're craving that escapism from
the release, right?
Yeah, completely. So that's where I struggle with the definition of it.
Do you think it's because we've built up such a is it because we've built up such a point culturally we have in a full generation? We brought it up that I go to work the whole week or the whole day, depending on how your time frame is, and the moment that I'm switched off is the moment I sit down with a beer or wine.
Yeah.
Is that the cultural thing that, the every ad that we've been fed since the 90s, I can remember as a kid, was the dad sitting on the couch and going, cool, I'm going to relax, I'm going to watch the footy, right? Where I'm going to watch the Union, or I'm going to watch the football. That was the culture. Or the other really weird one was the mom at home relaxing and having the wine.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's that whole cultural thing of, I can switch off when I do this action.
Yeah, and completely. And it's taught to us through these adverts completely, in the fact that that's how you unwind. They don't say, right, you don't see adverts on TV going, right, okay, do a bit of breath work.
Yeah.
Go and do some yoga.
Yoga, right?
Yeah, exactly. Go and have an ice bath or something like that. It's all about, right, it's a great marketing.
Yeah.
It's fantastic marketing, but that's it. I remember as a kid, the Budweiser advert on TV, and it'd be like, what's that? and
there's the middle 90s, right?
Yeah, and I remember everybody used to do that. I was at school doing that.
Yeah.
So that's how bad it is, but that's how well marketed it is as well, that there's children in playgrounds, around schools, doing things from adverts. So we're already built towards that's what we're going to do for escapism, for fun, I think, is another one, and for joy, especially when it's kind of plugged to us as well that you're very lucky if you find a job that you love. Do you know what I mean as well? So I think if you're in a job that's not what you particularly want to do, and it's the quickest way of escapism.
And what's your thoughts with, coming on, there's the whole, I give up the alcohol, right? Or, hey, I realize it's the problem. So let's just say I realize it's a problem, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, a lot of it, right? To the problem, and I give it up. We were able to foresee there's a problem and give it up. Sometimes intervention needs to happen. But what you're not told either, and I know you're a guy, you've gone through this, and myself was, hey, giving it up doesn't resolve the issue. It literally just leaves you at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
So you start at the bottom. So it's like, cool, I'm going to give up alcohol and I'm going to lose all this bravado and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But literally you start like in the hangover state, like you don't know how to react. Your mental health's all over the place. Yeah. When I was, like I said, when I was 21, let's just say less than 2 decades ago, right? None of this mental health stuff was around. So it was like, okay, what do I do now? How do I react? How do I interact with people? So giving up the vice is great. But in the first instance, your mental health takes a bloody beating.
Yeah.
And a lot of people aren't prepared for it. And I think that because there's not the knowledge of it, you go through and go, no, stuff this. I'd rather take the vice than worry with my own demons, because also by giving up the alcohol, I don't have to think as much.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry as much, or I can hide as well behind it.
Yeah. No, it's always the any vice that goes for. It's the easiest option because it's readily available, and it means I remember just the amount of work at the start you had to do, and there's a lot of that you create in your head that doesn't exist. There's a lot of what if they think this, and your anxiety, right? Yeah, completely, and especially in a world and culture that we live in where you're judged if you don't drink. And it's crazy that if you don't drink, people are like, why? Well, and they feel that they can ask you the question why. Like that's like, because there could be a multitude of reasons why you're not drinking. And yeah, it's hard work. The initial process of it is hard work. I said it's like, as they say when you go for an interview or something, and it's like, right, okay, imagine yourself naked in front of they're all naked. It's the opposite way around. You'll feel stripped of every bit of armor that you've put on yourself to protect yourself, and you're just there going, right, I'm living in a world that is alcohol based and driven, and I'm going against it, but I'm doing it because I'm doing it for me. But who am I? Yep. You end up being kind of laid there, being like, actually, who am I? Because for years, from the age of 17, I was this other person. But when you're sober, you don't want to get up on tables and start dancing. Do you know what I mean? So there's a lot to unpack with it on that side of things. And it'll be different for everybody else. Do you know what I mean? There'll be things that I've done. People use alcohol for so many different reasons. Crutches. Yeah. Completely. And it's like I've said before, it works initially for a lot of these things for if you lose somebody, but then it's a certain point where you use that crutch, but if you're using that crutch all the time, it wears. So, and there's a certain point where when the crutch doesn't fit anymore, how it starts affecting you, and it starts affecting, and I use the analogy of literally a crutch, and you've injured your leg and you've got this crutch under your arm, but once it's worn, then you're actually doing more damage to yourself than good. So yeah, it's very, there's heaps to try and look at. You have to look at, for me, I had to look at every aspect of my life, and I had to find the joy in what did I enjoy again, because I used to think I enjoyed drink, and I didn't. I enjoyed the escapism, and that was the big part of it. And it was actually being able to go back and go, right, okay, what things do I love? What things make me happy? What gives me peace? And so. What did you replace? So obviously you're talking about is you wanted escapism and the experience and stuff that the alcohol did. From working through it, have you replaced those moments with other situations in your life now, so you no longer feel the need of, hey, I need to go to the pub and rage. I go down and I go for a bike ride, or like, it's funny because you see in culturally the people that have made this shift have found something to fill it with. Yeah, because you always, as a human, you still need to fill. You need to understand the void. Yeah, but then you need to fill the void with good stuff. Pretty much. Yeah, no, definitely. I think I got really into well-being and all those kind of well-being books. I was like, right, give me another one. I'll read this. Here we go. I've got to pray now and all. Just going through it all. I became slightly Buddhist in the whole process of it all. But yeah, no, I think I looked at I've started really looking at psychology. Right Mate fills my time. I fill my time now with service for others, I think, generally. I think I was so self-indulgent when I drank, and it was all about me, all my videos then were all about, or saying that Right Mate's pretty much about me, but all the videos were just like very depressing when I look back at them now, because it's I can see that there's nothing behind the eyes. Yeah. That I'm pretty empty. I'm just kind of like a vessel moving about the place. Whereas now, I've completely changed it, and rather than think it, and it helps with my anxiety completely, is about not what I can do for myself, but what can I do for others, and that fills my time, and that makes me really happy, and that makes me feel like I'm worth. Because when I was drinking, I felt like I had no worth, and once I got to my limit with drink, then I'd be smashing cocaine all the time. And then and it was just that complete trying to fill the void, literally what you're speaking of. But now I do it by just doing wholesome shit. You know what I mean?
Total opposite.
Yeah. But I'm so self-aware now in the fact that I know when I really work on a basis of internal and external. So whatever I'm doing externally, whether that's socializing, giving my time to people, work, anything like that. I'm also very, like, what can I do for myself? Like, I'll go and read a book now. I'll go and do a bit of, like, meditation or a bit of, I've got a Shakti mat at the moment, which is the most painful thing ever, but I enjoy it. Do you know what I mean? I lie on it, and it just gives me that kind of headspace just to be like, right, that detachment, so I can. And I think that was important. When I was drinking, it was all external. Everything was external. It was somebody's birthday, right, I'll go out for their birthday. And although that was kind of enabling me, it was for everybody else, but for my own gain. Yeah. Whereas now I do it for everybody else because I want to see their gain a little bit more. And that gives me, that's kind of how I filled it.
So the hard question to you at the moment, from going through it, what do you think we've got to do culturally to shift, not to shift society and say and become non-drinkers, but shift the perception that I need it, or I need it for strength, or I need it for bravery or bravado, or I need to build it as part of my relaxation stuff. What do you think we've got to do culturally at the moment to try and
education,
break those holds?
Yeah, education, 100%. I think it comes down to. So at the moment, I'm trying to work towards working with more 16 to 20-year-olds. I think before that, it's like culturally and stuff, it's hard to judge because I still think there's still quite a big division between lower income households, higher, and all that kind of. There's a whole spectrum of it, but I think between that kind of 16 and 20 age, we need to be able, because I think people are spat out by the educational system. And if they're not going on to university and all those things, it's like, right, okay, be a man or be a woman. This is what's defined by that and all this. So I think it's really important that we maybe even before 16 get into schools, and it's about how you deal with anger, how you deal with trauma, how you deal with things, and just opening up the conversation more and talking more and doing more like that. I think culturally, I think it's a fight uphill because of marketing, and there's no money in these companies for us being sober. But I think the science, just the science of it all as well, the importance of what it does to your sleep, what it does to you. So alcohol's liquid and fat soluble. So it means it affects your whole body. So I definitely, there's big things, like I think there should be, if we're going to put pictures on cigarette packets, I think by God, we should be having pictures on drinks and stuff of what it does to you, because what we see on the outside is just like the tip of the iceberg. It's what it's doing to our brains. It's what it's doing to us physically without us even seeing it. And then we're curious to why we're getting cancer so much and stuff like that. And I think alcohol is a real big part in that, hugely. I think there's a lot that it's like, well, it's connected to 7 different types of cancer that they know of. there's just so many things. But I think culturally, it's a hard one. I think it's about getting there early rather than just giving. It's all right for people like me and you now and giving tools to help and being there to support, but it's to get people before they jump into the river earlier on. And I think it has to start education and creating spaces for which, if you're feeling angry, what to do, what we do emotionally. Because like you said just before, we're not connected as a society anymore, really, apart from on phones and stuff. And I think that's why there's a lot of lost people out there and a lot of lonely people out there, is due to the fact that people aren't talking, just generally. Like down the road, it was crazy coming to New Zealand and people saying hello to me when I was walking down the road. In the UK, everybody just kind of, if you smile at somebody, prepare to get punched in the face. So I think it's that kind of, it's hard. It's trying to, it's going into like phones and stuff now, technology, but it's about how we can find ways to disconnect from that and reconnect with ourselves. And I think it has to start at schools now, because kids have got phones. So if they don't see how they can let out their anger apart from using an emoji or using something down that kind of line, or just putting a meme or something up, then I don't know how they're going to be able to come out of that. And then it's the most readily available drug to get to cure your anger, sadness, all that. Although obviously, the more you do it, the worse it gets.
Yeah, totally. It is such a crazy one. Culturally, 16, 17, it's almost really embedded. Not that you legally can, but let's not beat around the bush. At 16, everyone's drinking anyway, right?
Yeah.
And they're picking it up, and it's what they've learned from. And so true is, it's not us educating kids about don't drink. It's about us educating kids about how to handle these society situations where they might find themselves depressed or anxious or social anxiety, not fitting in, because then they lead to something. They need something, right? They need a way out. And alcohol, drugs, hurting themselves, self-harm is one of those ways out that we see in society. And then they build their relationship. I also see, I think we might be in a partial shift at the moment, where a lot of our teenagers, role models that we're seeing at the moment, having a real big pivot shift in their perception out to the wider world. So I don't know if you remember, like in the 90s, you would have had all the sports stars sitting there in interviews with beers, right? They'd been sitting there not because they were paid to do it, just because they wanted to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've spoken about Israel Adesanya quite a few times. He did a press conference, when was it, last year or the year before, where they had an energy drink on it, and he kicked it off the table because he wanted a bottle of water. I think it was Monster Energy, and it was a big hoo-ha about that. And so now we're seeing this big shift of, hey, in some of those key areas, in some of the sports stars are now pivoting to what is better for them, because actually, funny enough, the sports stars of today are different to the sports stars of the 90s.
Yeah.
I look at the genetics and the training of a union or league boy now, and I go and look at footage of the 90s, and it's literally like the guys would have a shot of whiskey and a beer before going on the game and playing, like at national level, right?
Yeah.
Where now it's like a science and everything else. So I'm wondering, in that space where that culturally fed a lot of it down, we're seeing that pivot, but we still got to bring up the other corner where we spoke about the mental health skills, so they don't jump to the alcohol or the drugs per se to give them that way out.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's, they are. And I think it's great seeing it when like Adesanya does stuff like that. Like you're saying, I remember seeing it was like, I think it was like a substitution for England rugby, and he's like having a cigarette on the side just like before he goes on. But I think the more that celebrities can stay true to themselves and what's good for them rather than plug in, but money talks as well. So I think it's the more we can do with that, and the more that these kind of stars can implement these changes. And also, I think it's good doing things like that, but as we were saying, it's them being more open about how they deal with their anger or their sadness or and what they do. And I think it's about that general chat that they have to. Kids look up to him. Yep. I look up to him. Do you know what I mean? I see players, and if they're saying do something, I'm not going to. Sometimes they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I'll go and buy that product," or "I'm going to do that." But I think it's, it's just hugely important that we just open up that kind of space to which there's more options out there available for kids to be able to vent in a productive way as well, not just in a non-antisocial way as well.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much for that, Guy. And, as we're coming sort of to the end of today's show now, is there anything you want to just leave the listeners or the viewers with sort of like a last point around this, that just so they can think about it over the next couple of days, or, if they're struggling with something or something's holding on to them?
Yeah, I think be true to you. I think it's important that if you've got an issue with alcohol, drugs, any vice in particular, that it's key to open up and don't be scared of who you actually are, and just trust in that, because a lot of people will love that more than they love the person that you think they love.
Yep, awesome. And where can people find you online?
So Instagram's the best one at RightMateNZ. On there, I just give tools and tips for mental health, for alcohol and drug use. And if I don't know, I point people in the right direction with that as well.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Guy. And as always, I say when we end off the show, as much as it sounds really cheesy in that, I don't go at the end of my show and say, hey, if you like this, hit the like and subscribe, because I don't really care about those. What I try and say at the end of it is, if there's something that Guy had to say or myself had to say, if there's a situation that you're going through that you're struggling with, if there's a vice, irrespective of what that vice is, that you feel you need some help with, please reach out to myself or to Guy. Yep. And as he says, we're happy to guide you in the right direction, give you some insights. We've both gone through it. We've both gone through these experiences, and understanding one side to the other side, and some of the tools that you might need. So please think about that. If there's someone you're also aware of, just give them some bullshit reason. Go, hey, you should listen to this podcast. It's amazing, because they're talking about something else, and try to sucker them in to listen to it. Yeah. And then they might be able to lead into that conversation post they're having a listen or a watch of it, pretty much to say, hey, maybe we need to help you out, and we take those next steps forward. But always at the end of the day out there, please stay safe, stay beautiful. And as always, see you next time.